The Cameron Peak fire just keeps growing, expanding toward Fort Collins, and it grew another 6,000 acres overnight. It's now 164,000 acres.
And right now the fire is creeping closer to Estes Park, and that is where we find Denver7's Jason Grenauer.
And if the growth in the smoke plume from this afternoon is any indication, that fire is likely continuing to grow. And that means so is the worry here in town in Estes Park, as well as for those under mandatory evacuation who live even closer to the fire line.
It's surreal.
Smoke blanketed Estes Park this morning as those living north of town are turned away at road checkpoints.
What I have as far as my daughter, my animals, that's the most important thing for me right now.
Gloria Oots was evacuated from Glen Haven, only a few miles away, as the fire burns closer and closer to her home.
It was just crazy. I started getting a little nervous and started resigning myself to thinking, you know what, we're just going to lose everything at this point.
Winds weren't as bad on Thursday, which did allow for airdrops and not as much extreme fire behavior.
So we're going to have resources, including structure protection resources, really concentrated in this area in here. The area of Storm Mountain, Cedar Park, the Retreat, Glen Haven, and Estes Park.
Fire officials said they have beefed up the number of crews in those areas to try to save homes, as power crews turned off more power to affected and evacuated areas, and even more sections of Rocky Mountain National Park were closed.
It's close, you know, and as you can see, there's dry fuel everywhere.
Photographer and Estes Park resident Brett Rios took these photos of the fire as it exploded in size yesterday. He and all of Estes Park are hoping for better today.
We're hoping that with today the wind staying down, that they're able to get attacked on it and start getting some defensible lining in. But we're concerned about tomorrow, the winds that are going to be brought up tomorrow, and it pushing the fire again.
So many places continue to be under that mandatory evacuation order, but earlier this afternoon, the Larimer County Sheriff's Office did lift those voluntary evacuation orders for several neighborhoods, including Crystal Lakes and Red Feather Lakes. We have the full list of evacuations from the largest wildfire on record in our state's history up right now on the denverchannel.com. Reporting in Estes Park, I'm Jason Grenauer, Denver 7.
And just southwest of that fire, the East Troublesome Fire in Grand County has grown exponentially in the last 24 hours. This time yesterday, 400 acres. Right now, 3,700 acres and has yet to be contained. High winds early this morning led to evacuations in Bighorn Park. So far, Hot Sulphur Springs is not being evacuated, but areas just outside of town are. Chief Meteorologist Mike Nelson joins us now.
And Mike, it's going to take a serious change in the weather to help out those firefighters.
Indeed, it's going to take a lot more precipitation and fewer days with wind. Let me show you what's happening right now. This is a time lapse just in the last hour from our camera in Alt as the sun goes down into the smoke plume to the west. That smoke is primarily from the Cameron Peak fire. Look at that dramatic shot right now. And this is the smoke that we see across Colorado. You see the combination of both fires there. It's going to take that smoke out all the way to Kansas into the Midwest. Radar does show some of the smoke plume still, not nearly as brightly as it did 24 hours ago, but this is the problem for tomorrow. We have fire weather warnings all along the Front Range mountains and foothills, basically along and east of the Continental Divide all the way down to New Mexico, as a warm front is going to push through. First, a really cold night tonight in the eastern plains, but tomorrow it's warmer, it's drier, and that is a major concern once again. It should not be as strong a wind as we had yesterday, but a concern nonetheless. What's going to come next? Well, tonight at 10, I will have the complete winter outlook for temperatures and precipitation.
Thank you, Mike. The fire situation here in Colorado is always changing, as you know, so you can always check out the denverchannel.com for the latest information on evacuations and containment. And don't forget to download the Denver7 app for Roku, Apple TV, Fire Stick, or Android TV, so you can see the latest video and get updates on what's happening when we are not on the air. The security guard accused in a deadly shooting during last weekend's downtown Denver protest will be charged with second-degree murder. Charges against Matthew Doloff are expected to be formally filed by the district attorney's office next Monday. Doloff was at the protest protecting a crew working for 9 News and was contracted through the company Pinkerton. During a confrontation that was captured through photos and videos from people nearby, Doloff shot and killed Lee Keltner. If convicted, Doloff now faces between 16 and 48 years in prison.
Health One Hospital is facing some sharp criticism from its own healthcare workers. The union is calling out the hospital chain for high prices, lack of staffing, safe staffing, and aggressive collection practices. Denver7's Jessica Porter spoke to the union today. Jess?
The union is speaking out just a few months after low staffing may have contributed to a patient's death at North Suburban Medical Center in Thornton. You may start seeing commercials from SEIU Local 105 with the goal of pushing Health One to do better. They say Health One is making huge profits off Denver metro area residents by charging high prices and aggressively pursuing payment through its own collection company, all while lobbying against affordable health care. They cite a report that says Health One charges prices 275% higher than Medicare rates. And they say while Health One is raking in the cash, they aren't providing healthcare workers enough PPE.
Very high profits, again, over 1.1 billion last quarter in the middle of a pandemic. They clearly can afford to do better by the patients and the employees that work for them and provide the care every single day.
Health One is owned by HCA Healthcare, the largest hospital chain in the country. And they own hospitals like Rose Medical Center, Swedish Medical Center, Sky Ridge, and Medical Center of Aurora. And that's just to name a few. This year, they received $1.3 billion in CARES Act funding, which is not subject to repayment. We reached out to Health One for comment and are waiting to hear back. Reporting live in the newsroom, Jessica Porter, Denver 7.
New tonight, as coronavirus cases continue to rise here in Colorado, more restrictions are coming to Denver. Exactly what they are, Denver officials are not saying yet. Denver's Department of Public Health will only say they are working on new restrictions due to the spike in cases and hospitalizations, and they expect those to come out sometime between tomorrow and early next week. Also today, another grim milestone for our state. We hit the highest increase in new COVID-19 cases with just over 1,100. That is the biggest jump that we have seen since this pandemic began. And unfortunately, bed counts just keep rising as well. 420 people are currently being hospitalized for COVID-19. The state can hold thousands more, but with numbers like these, new restrictions could be coming for other counties as well, and not just in Denver.
Denver Health is partnering with Denver Public Schools to give free COVID tests and health referrals for any student experiencing symptoms. DPS says this partnership will give students easier access to health professionals if they feel sick, and that way, ultimately, schools can stay open longer with no outbreaks. Now, parents can access the tests and the referrals for their kids through their individual schools.
It's been 5 days since ballots went out to registered voters in Colorado, and since then, more than 300,000 of those ballots have been turned in. So to put that into perspective here, in 2016, it took more than a week to reach that point. So it's clear Colorado's seeing record turnout. Does that mean Coloradans are concerned about their ballots not being counted?
Denver7's Lance Hernandez is asking questions about voter safety.
Election judges setting up a vote center at Smoky Hill Library.
We want to ensure voter integrity.
The judges, Republican, Democrat, and unaffiliated.
So we want to make sure that nothing's been tampered with either during setup, during transportation, or during their election cycle itself.
Governor Jared Polis calls voting a sacred right.
Thomas Paine eloquently put it, voting is the right upon which all other rights are dependent.
There is huge interest in this election. More than 300,795 Coloradans have cast ballots so far.
At this point right now, we have had 24 times more turnout than at this point in 2016.
The state and counties taking steps to make sure voters are safe from the pandemic.
All of our election judges have their temperatures taken every day. They do a survey about different symptoms. Everybody wears masks.
And from those who might try to intimidate them.
In Colorado, we have no statewide rule regulating whether you can bring in a gun to a polling center or near a drop box.
So you might see some people carrying a gun at some polling sites, but not others. The law prohibits open and concealed carry on public school grounds.
When we have a vote center in a school, even if you have a concealed carry permit, under state law, that is not allowed on a public school ground.
But know this, intimidating voters is against the law. If you are intimidated at a polling site, or if you witness voter intimidation, contact the Secretary of State's office or your local law enforcement.
Any type of voter intimidation is illegal.
Lance Hernandez, Denver 7.
And if you need any help with your ballot, visit our Denver7 election guide. You can find it right now on the Denverchannel.com. And speaking of getting out and voting, 88-year-old Rosemarie James is making sure her voice is heard.
Her daughter Andrea sent us this photo yesterday of her mom dropping off her ballot in Louisville.
She says despite any physical challenges, Rose was happy to put her ballot in the drop box in person.
Keeping up with the times.
One Colorado city is working on its revitalization plan, but it needs a little boost from voters.
Plus, helping stop the spread. Drug makers are starting to test COVID-19 vaccines on teenagers.
And keeping up with the candidates. 2 town halls tonight, President Trump and Joe Biden at the exact same time.
So you're not being set up tonight, right?